You're in a good place now. You are listening to Perspectives with Ashley Burgess.
Welcome back live to the Ashley Burgess podcast. And today we're talking about something that most people don't even realize they're doing. You think you're being supportive. You think you're being loving. You think that you're just in good relationships. But what you're actually doing is regulating everyone else's emotions. Let me ask you something. Do you walk into a room and immediately scan someone's face to see what mood they're in? Do you change your tone depending on how they're feeling? Do you soften your opinions or edit your words or over-explain yourself so they don't get upset? If someone you love is anxious, angry, and sad or spiraling, do you feel it in your body like it's your own emergency? If you feel that way, you might not just be caring. You actually may be over-functioning. And today we're going to break this down, what emotional regulation actually is, the difference between caring and enabling, where the pattern comes from, and how to stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours to carry. Because here's the truth. You're not meant to be someone else's nervous system. So we're going to talk about healthy emotional regulation and what that means. What is emotional regulation versus what is overfunctioning? Healthy emotional regulation means each adult actually manages their own inner and internal state. If I'm upset, I regulate myself. If you're upset, you regulate yourself. We can support each other, but we don't carry each other. That's a partnership. Overfunctioning looks very different. Overfunctioning means if they're upset, then I need to fix it. If they're angry, I need to calm them down. If they're spiraling out of control, I need to stabilize them. And when one person overfunctions, the other person actually underfunctions. And this is where it gets interesting. This is relationship physics. The more you regulate for them, the less they learn to regulate for themselves. And over time, this dynamic becomes invisible. You don't even realize that you're actually doing it. You just know that you're tired, you're worn out, you're beat, you seem to not be able to sleep well, you seem to be processing a lot of emotion, and some of it really has nothing to do with you. So let's talk about the signs that you're actually regulating another person's emotions and feelings. Let's dive deep right here. First, it's interesting because there's the concept of hypervigilance. And when you're hypervigilant when it comes into relationships, it means that you read these micro expressions of people. You notice tone shifts practically immediately. You feel emotional temperature changes from another person like a thermostat. And your nervous system learned to scan this actually at a very early age. Another indication that you're regulating other people is the guilt reflex. They're upset and somehow you feel responsible. You apologize quickly. You explain yourself too much. You try to clear it up before conflict escalates, even when you didn't do anything wrong. The third that we need to look at is identity suppression. You hold back your opinions, you avoid specific topics, you shrink your reactions. And that's interesting. You don't say, this bothered me, or I didn't really like this, or I wasn't really happy about that. Instead, you say, hey, everything's fine. I'm fine. Because somewhere inside, your brain says, if I say this, they may spiral out of control. They may lose it. They may get angry. They may get upset. And a fourth indication is that emotional exhaustion. After interacting with them, you may feel drained. You replay conversations over and over again, looking for maybe what you said wrong or you did wrong. You wondered if you handled the situation correctly and you worry about it and pontificate on it. You also think about how to prevent future issues. And that's emotional labor. And over time, as this happens over and over again, it begins to add up. So where does this pattern come from? It doesn't happen randomly. It's usually conditioning. If you grew up around, let's say, a volatile parent, an emotionally unstable caregiver, maybe you grew up around addiction. One of your family members, mom, dad, maybe was an alcoholic or addicted to drugs. You grew up around narcissistic traits or even borderline traits, and we've talked about that a lot on the podcast here as well as on the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to Life Coach Ashley Burgess and hit that subscribe button. We put out 2 videos new each week, and some of it are very easy breezy 1-minute shorts, as well as we have a lot of long form videos as well to really go into deep explanation of situations. Besides the narcissistic, the addictive, the borderline, the emotionally unstable caregiver, and the volatile parent, you also have chronic anxiety or depression. You might have been dealing with somebody with chronic anxiety, constantly calming them down, assuring them. And you probably learn this is if I manage the emotional environment in the family dynamic, I stay safe. So you inherently become the peacemaker, the mature one, the emotional stabilizer. And the skill set that actually works very well, the skill set actually helps you survive and thrive as much as you possibly can in that environment. But now that same skill set is running your adult relationships. Your nervous system actually equates love with management. It's the same thing. And that's why a lot of times in relationships, you become like a parental figure to the person that you're supposed to be in a romantic relationship, which creates really messed up boundaries and it creates kind of a messed up relationship. If I calm them, I'm loved. If I soothe them, I am secure. And if I prevent conflict, I'm safe. But remember, that's not intimacy. That's actually survival. And many of you listening have also dated emotionally dysregulated partners as well. Emotional dysregulation is definitely rampant. And when someone struggles with emotional regulation themselves, especially with traits of BPD, narcissism, emotional maturity, the dynamic actually intensifies. Because now your overfunctioning meets their underfunctioning. And this begins to lock in and it becomes a constant pattern. It becomes a constant way of life. And that's something that we have to be aware of in our relationship dynamics, which can actually become a problematic, obviously. So then we have to ask ourselves, and I think many of you are asking yourself right now, well, what's the difference between caring versus enabling? Because it seems kind of like they're pretty close together. And this is where people get really confused, is because you think I'm just supportive. And support sounds like I hear you, that sounds hard, wish I could help, I'm here. But enabling sounds very different. Instead of I hear you, or that sounds difficult, enabling is I'll fix it, I'll take the responsibility, I'll absorb the consequences, I'll smooth this one over, I'll clean this up. And so the interesting thing is that support actually allows discomfort while enabling prevents that discomfort and that reality for the person that should be going through it. If someone explodes and you immediately apologize to calm them down, that's what we call enabling. If someone avoids accountability and you step in, that's also enabling. And if someone blames you and you internalize it just to restore the peace, that's also enabling as well. And here's really the hard truth about it is enabling feels like love when you're actually trauma bonded to another person. But it keeps both people stuck in this cycle pattern of this trauma bond. Nobody gets well, nobody gets healthy. So what happens when you finally stop? What happens when you finally wake up to what is actually going on? Well, first off, as you know, this is where it's going to definitely get uncomfortable. And when you stop regulating them, they actually may escalate. They may escalate their attitude and their actions. They may accuse you of being mean or cold. They may say that you're the one that's changed. They may say you don't care anymore. You're too distant. You're selfish. But what's actually happening is that the system is recalibrating. When you stop over-functioning, the person that is under-functioning actually begins to feel exposed. And they now have to self-soothe themselves or try to find the ability to self-soothe. And if they've relied on you to do this for years, there may be a really heavy resistance to this change. It doesn't mean that you're wrong to change this because you have to alter these circumstances to actually make things better. It means the dynamic is actually shifting into the right direction. So how do we stop regulating other people? This is interesting. Many of you might be saying, yes, I do have a lot of codependent tendencies. Growing up with my family dynamic was very hard. I was having to constantly reassure my mother, my father, sister, brother situation. I was the babysitter. I was the helper. And so how do I stop regulating other people? Well, first you have to stop. You have to take a pause. And before fixing, you need to ask, is this mine to fix? Did I cause this situation? Or am I reacting to discomfort? Am I just reacting to discomfort in the situation? Second, we have to accept silence. Silence is not always a bad thing. We don't always have to feel the silence void. We can let it be silent. You don't have to fill in that. If they're upset, let them feel it. Let them feel the being upset. Let them feel the anger. Let them feel that feeling. You don't have to take that away from them. Adults are allowed to actually experience frustration, sadness, anxiety. The third thing is stop over-explaining. You've gotten into this, concept and pattern of over-explaining yourself to death. That's what you've had to do. I over-explain until you're blue in the face. And so you don't have to keep doing that. Just to have clarity doesn't require a dissertation, right? So it's like, less is more, and be able to regulate that, because you over-explaining is just creating this even more so, this trauma bond. Fourth, you need to regulate yourself. Notice notice when your body actually feels urgency. Are you feeling like stressed? Is your blood pressure going up? Is your chest tight? And that's something that we need to think about. It's time to breathe, because that's your old conditioning. You're internalizing it. You're actually physically internalizing their situation and actually believing that it's yours. Fifth, you want to separate love from rescue. Remember, these are two different things. Love supports growth. People need to grow in these relationships. Rescue actually prevents the other person from growing, actually prevents you from stop enabling them. Remember, because as you keep rescuing, you are enabling them. People talk about somebody hitting rock bottom. Well, they can't hit rock bottom, or they can't come to awareness if you keep saving them and you keep jumping in and solving the problem or cleaning the problem or making the problem go away. And I want you to hear this clearly. You're not responsible for someone else's emotional stability, okay? You can be compassionate without carrying their stuff. You can be supportive without absorbing their energy and their situation. You can actually see it as there. And you can love without managing them. Managing somebody and loving them is two different things. And if you spend your life being the emotional thermostat, constantly adjusting yourself to keeping everyone else comfortable, of course, this is going to make you tired, exhausted, emotionally spent. You were never made to be someone else's regulator. You were meant to actually be a partner or a friend or a spouse. And I hope that this is resonating with you, because I want you to really kind of reflect on a couple of questions. Who taught you that you're responsible for everyone else's feelings? Really, think about that. Go back into the recesses of your brain, go back into the past, go back into childhood. Who taught you that you're responsible for everyone else's feelings? Secondly, where did you learn that from? And are you constantly doing it? Because that belief, I don't believe started with you. I believe that was outside of you, that wasn't true to you. And because it wasn't true to you, these are things that we can let go. We don't have to continue with these. We don't have to continue with this. We can move forward in our life. We can move forward with change and persistence to actually find our truth. Just because these things happen in childhood, where things were put on us that we did not want, that we did not ask for, that we were kind of thrown into, doesn't mean that we have to keep carrying that. We don't have to keep wearing that. We can actually shed that and become more of who we are. We're not here to totally harden you. I'm not here to make you a narcissist or a raging narcissist. That is not what I'm trying to do at all. I'm just here to refocus your energy back on you. I'm here to refocus your energy back on you. And it's about here to freeing you, because I think there's also a concept of freeing you, like freeing you from this burden, freeing you from going down this direction, freeing you from this situation, because this is a lot of weight on your back when you're having to go through this process, because you're not only carrying your emotions and your feelings and your stress and your anxiety and your life issues, but you're also carrying this other person's as well, trying to figure out how to make it work for them, trying to figure out how to help them in their life. And usually those things are solved prior to your own solving of your own issues. Okay, and when people talk about codependency, I know that people say, well, it's not in the DSM and it's not an actual diagnosis. Fine, but it is a type of programming. And that is very true. Codependency is a type of programming that we fall into because we were forced into it growing up to be able to feel secure. There were things that we had to do to make things work around us. And so what we're doing here, basically fundamentally within today's podcast, is to free ourselves to realize what has been going on, because freedom of this cannot start until you actually stop carrying someone else. And this is something I want you to really look at. Think about it. Are you in relationships right now, or is your marriage or your significant other, is this relationship more about enabling than caring? And these are things that you have to ask yourself, am I trying to listen? Am I trying to be there for them? Or am I trying to fix things? Am I trying to take responsibility for them? Or am I letting them take responsibility for their own actions? And where do these patterns come from? And being honest about it, because this is the only way that we get to the core of what we need to augment and change, because we would rather have a friendship, a loving friendship, or a loving romantic relationship, or a marriage that is not based on a trauma bond, but actually based on actual caring and love, because those are two different things. When we have a relationship based on a trauma bond, both people are incapable of being able to grow and move on as far as being able to emotionally regulate themselves, allow the other person to do what they need to do to emotionally regulate them, not taking on other people's burdens and really focusing on our own. Because what I've realized is we can all talk about, our purpose in life, but our main purpose in this lifetime is to actually find ourselves, to understand ourselves, and to accept ourselves. And that is our big purpose in this lifetime. And a lot of times we learn more about our spouse or our friends than we know about ourselves. And I think that this podcast, if you listen to it maybe a couple of times, can resonate with you, and you can see where you're doing this in relationships as well as even in your marriage or your romantic relationship. If you haven't already, go online and check out the website, ashleyburgess.com, ashleyberges.com, as well as check out the YouTube channel. 2 new video posts every week. And if there is some content that you'd like for me to talk about on those videos, if you're following on even Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, you can go online to ashleyberges.com and click on that contact page, and you can send me a message, and I'll reply back within at least 2 business days. So definitely want to get back with you on any content that you are interested in me covering. And in the process, think about this. When you look at patterns in life, we're able to actually grow. When we're emotionally regulating other people, we are walking on eggshells. And it's time to have freedom. It's time to stop walking on eggshells. And it's time to actually move forward with our life. I hope that you found that this podcast has been helpful. Please subscribe to the podcast here on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever podcast website that you look at. And let us know if there's any content that you'd like us to cover. I hope this podcast has helped you, and I look forward to seeing you next week.